So President-elect Biden's inauguration this week will look very different from the nation's past ceremonies. Mr. Biden will be sworn in on the West Front steps of the Capitol Wednesday, as has been tradition for the past 40 years. But heightened security threats following this month's deadly assault on the Capitol building, plus a global pandemic, means celebrations will be drastically cut back this year. Our Nancy Cordes got a behind-the-scenes look.
So are they done doing the plotting, or do they still have?
Maju Varghese is the executive director of the Presidential Inaugural Committee. It's his job to plan the most complicated inaugural ceremony ever.
Are you getting any sleep at this point?
I'm getting a couple hours a night. A good friend of mine checked in on me the other day, and he said the signs were showing.
Varghese is no stranger to big events. He was the COO of the Biden campaign, which had to reimagine the Democratic National Convention and the election night celebration to keep them COVID safe.
What were the elements of an inauguration that were most important to you to preserve?
So what we wanted to do was preserve the images that people are used to when it comes to seeing a peaceful transfer of power. We wanted President-elect Biden to take the oath on the West Front, and we wanted to give people a sense that, we are still, even in tough times, we're a resilient country.
I, Barack Hussein Obama.
After all, presidents have been getting sworn in on the West Front of the Capitol for the past 40 years, with one key difference.
Yeah, generally, that platform would be packed. Like people shoulder to shoulder, maybe up to 1,000 people up there.
On Wednesday, to maintain social distancing, it'll be closer to 200. And the National Mall will be completely blocked off to the public, though that doesn't mean it'll be empty.
Well, what you'll see on the mall, is going to be a sea of flags. 2009, I was here for President Obama's first inauguration. I was looking this way, down toward the monument on a bright day, and seeing people wave their flags in the light. We wanted to capture some of that spirit.
And so this weekend, workers began installing nearly 200,000 American flags and state and territory flags.
All of it to show the American people that we're thinking about them in this time.
We spoke amid what felt like an armed encampment. It was just 12 days ago that thousands of rioters swarmed the very spot where President-elect Biden will be sworn in.
We just had to add more security.
Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar sits on the congressional committee that oversees inaugural events.
Did you ever consider bringing the entire inauguration inside and abandoning the West Front?
We thought, should we do it on another side? Should we do it inside? And time again, we came back to the point that no, this is where the inauguration traditionally has been held, not when you go way back, but traditionally. And we want to continue that tradition.
All right, Nancy Cordes is joining us from Capitol Hill right now to talk about all this. So, Nancy, in past inaugurations, as you say in your piece, hundreds of thousands of Americans travel to the nation's capital. Reporters are deployed from all over the world to cover this peaceful transfer of power. And for us as Americans to sort of say, look at us. Look how wonderful our democracy is. Look what we do every 4 years that you in far-flung countries in the third world, perhaps, and other places don't. Well, that's not going to happen this time around. We're looking at an inauguration amid a global pandemic and these elevated threat levels where our polling shows that a majority of Americans are afraid of other Americans right now.
Right. And, it's interesting, when I was interviewing Maju Varghese for that piece, I asked him what the most painful thing was for him to give up when planning this inauguration. And he said it was really the sea of people on the mall. He said he had friends from both political parties who would come to the mall every 4 years for inauguration, no matter who was being inaugurated, no matter what party they were from, because they just felt like it was so important to witness democracy in action. And just about nobody is going to be able to do that in person this time around. You can't even get within blocks of the National Mall. And so it is pretty neat that they've come up with a way to symbolize the Americans who would ordinarily be there, also keep the National Mall from looking so empty and vacant on such an important day when you've got people watching both here in the U.S. and around the world. So they're putting up these flags. They started this weekend, but as you can imagine, when you're trying to put 200,000 flags or so in place, it takes a few days. So they got started this weekend. They'll be doing some more today, some more tomorrow, so that the entire National Mall will just be this sea of flags that you'll be able to see from above, from all the cameras that are stationed on the west front of the Capitol. And it should be a pretty beautiful sight, somewhat haunting, knowing that normally you'd have a lot of well-wishers there waving flags the way they were during President Obama's inauguration that we showed there in the video. But you know, they feel that it's the next best thing when, after all, you know, even before we were dealing with this new and ever-changing security situation, we were dealing with a global pandemic, and they already had been making plans to make sure that there wouldn't be people who tried to come on the mall and congregate, knowing that that could end up being a super spreader event.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was thinking, that this was always going to be a very different type of inauguration for sure. But seeing you out there, you know, the great distance that you have to be from the Capitol building, it looks like a military base or some sort of fortress, you know, watching your interviews. So give us a sense of kind of the layers of security. We know there are a lot of people, members of the National Guard there. What's the National Guard's role?
I mean, you can't even get within blocks of the National Mall at this point, or the U.S. Capitol, unless you've got a pass, or you're a member of Congress, or you're actually actively planning this inauguration. There are many layers of security. Everywhere you go, you see those tall fences. There are barricades. There are concrete barriers. There are massive military trucks stationed at every intersection to keep people from driving through. There are National Guard officers with large shotguns. In fact, my 10-year-old son, we went for a drive through the city this weekend because he was just so excited to see all these National Guard officers with their big weapons. That kind of thing is pretty exciting for a 10-year-old, even though it's a little sad for those of us to see the city transformed this way out of necessity because of security concerns, and frankly, as a deterrent to anyone who might want to come and cause harm. Obviously, this weekend had been billed as a weekend where we could see a whole bunch of protests or even riots, and that didn't happen. And I think it's probably because would-be rioters saw this huge show of force in Washington, D.C., and decided it wasn't worth the effort. It really, really is a very powerful signal to anyone who wants to do harm right now. Even those of us who are used to coming into the Capitol on a daily basis, you guys, it's every single day the perimeter is getting pushed back a little farther and a little farther, and we're walking a little farther just to get into the building. Just to do that interview on the mall with Maju, I walked about 2 miles from the CBS bureau because it was really the best and fastest way to get to the mall at this point with so many streets blocked off.
Wow.
Yeah, wow, indeed.
So,
sorry, go ahead, Vlad.
No, my bad.
We do not yet know when House Speaker Nancy Pelosi will send the single of impeachment against President Trump to the Senate. Are there any concerns that this could happen as soon as tomorrow when the Senate reconvenes? Because that's when the plan is, that they will be reconvening on the 19th.
Right. I think that is unlikely from everything that I'm hearing. And keep in mind that she's not going to act unilaterally. She's working with her counterpart in the Senate, Chuck Schumer, who's also negotiating with his other counterpart, Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader, because they want to do this in concert. It's not going to take anyone by surprise. And the consensus seems to be from both Republican and Democratic leaders I've spoken to that they really don't want to have these articles come over tomorrow, because then they're really required to get the trial underway the next day, which is Inauguration Day. And everyone says that is Joe Biden's day. It would be incredibly unseemly, but not to mention the fact that lawmakers are pretty busy on Inauguration Day. They've got a few things going on already. So the latest that I'm hearing is that they want to let the Senate get through a big batch of really high-profile confirmation hearings first for some of President-elect Biden's key cabinet members. For example, he's got 4 who are having their confirmation hearings tomorrow. He's got his transportation secretary, cabinet designee, Mayor Pete Buttigieg, Buttigieg, who's going to be having his hearing on Thursday. And then sometime after that, either Friday or perhaps even early the following week, the article of impeachment would be sent over from the House to the Senate so that the trial could get underway. And even once it starts, they're still hoping that they can kind of keep this split schedule where they spend half the day on the trial and half the day confirming nominees, because nobody knows at this point exactly how long the trial is going to last. That's something that is still being negotiated, and they don't want to set the administration back a week. Democrats don't want to set this administration back a week when they need, some of these key cabinet members to get into place.
All right, Nancy Cordes, thank you.
You're welcome.